You've tuned into the Bellingham Podcast for the week of November 21, 2021. This is episode 202. From that palindromic city by the Salish Sea, I am AJ Barsay.
And straight out of 98226, not a palindrome, I am Chris Powell. On this episode, AJ and I are drying off after getting wet. We're going to talk about recent events in Whatcom County and this region, and got us another special advertiser joining us for this episode, and a couple field tests in our new favorite segment, Rad or Sad. All that and more next on the Bellingham Podcast.
Well, I see that you're out of your slickers and your wellies. How you doing, Chris? you started to jump in. I was like, "Oh, are you going to cut me off?" Okay, cool.
No,
cool.
for the listeners who aren't viewing what's going on, I raised the microphone closer to my mouth. No, I'm doing just fine. We had a heck of a condition occur recently. Let's talk about the flooding and the rainfall that occurred and what happened in our Bellingham, Whatcom County, this whole area.
Well, all the way up to British Columbia.
Yeah, that too.
So in the news, and many have reached out. I mean, friends and listeners of the show alike. The condition that was called the atmospheric river, which basically, if you hadn't caught the news, pretty much everything from, I'll say, Marysville all the way up to Squamish, British Columbia. A good chunk of the Cascadian region, we got, imagine a river, like a river the size of the Nooksack, falling out of the sky in several hours, nonstop. It was insane. Like, we joke that the Pacific Northwest, we're wet, it's always rainy, it's always gray. This was water unlike anything I think I've seen.
Yeah, this was, I don't want to say biblical proportions. I'm not making light of this situation. No. It was a tragedy for so many residents, so many people, so much of our infrastructure. There were roads that were got destroyed.
Yeah.
As a result, there's a lot of repairs going on. Vehicles with water damage are now a thing. And this is a really tough situation for this county to go through.
No, I've got several friends where not even I've got several friends with like feet of water in their basement, but even up to like the first floor of some first like single story Rambler type places, you've got several inches of water, like as if a hurricane had come in. I have another friend where their vehicles just in their parking lot in like a townhouse apartment complex area. You know how a lot of them, you drive up and over to go down a little bit. Well, think about that. That's just a big well.
Yep.
Their vehicles, literally the water was up to the roof of the vehicles. They're destroyed. We're all in this together in the effort. I do want to give some props from what, there's a whole lot of headlines, a whole lot of news stories talking about this. I want to make mention, at least in one aspect, up in the northern part of Whatcom County, there is Sumas, a border town, if you will. And they got cut off pretty bad.
They got cut off. Everson, there's a whole lot of flooding, but the town of Linden, north on, Guide Meridian, I'll talk about that in a little bit. Linden had a whole lot of flooding occur in a lot of residential areas. North County Christ the King Church did an outstanding job of providing shelter for a lot of displaced folks. And the amount of community donations of food and other items, it's really... props. I want to give props, a special mention to at least North County Christ the King Church for opening the doors to be able to help with a minor catastrophe of what happened. When we had the heat dome this summer, that was, we heard the warnings in the weather forecast.
Yeah.
And to beat the heat, there was a run on fans and air conditioning units and things like that. How could we have a run on something other than boots?
Sand. So I helped our neighbor. He needed some sandbags, and of course this was during the work week. The first minute that we could duck out and out of work to go and get a couple of there was no sand to be had in all of Whatcom County. I literally helped him get the last 2 sandbags that could be purchased at any, like from as far south as hardware sales all the way north to Home Depot. Like, sure. there was a run on sand. I had talked to hardware sales, and they said that by, I think it was 9:30 that morning, everything that they had that was sandbags, tube sand, masonry sand, gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it
and
was
put to use.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if there, I mean, this isn't quite in the rearview mirror for
Oh no,
Whatcom County.
we still have flooding.
Oh yeah, but at least a couple ideas that came to mind. Should there be something like this in the future for folks to keep in mind? If you are a renter, do you have renter's insurance? And no, we're not publicizing a particular insurance company, but just in general. I mean, throw a dart. You might be able to get a reasonable rate for your stuff should something horrible like this occurs.
Or just the price of getting a hotel, you know,
Yeah.
when you're displaced, like something like this, you know.
Exactly. Along those lines, do you have an escape route from not an escape route, but do you have a route that bug out, thank you, that you can either stay with a friend who may be unaffected with where their home is, that just in case you have a place to stay or at least somewhere to shower. And then speaking of bug out, and this is not in the prepper realm, but do you have adequate food and
Stores.
Liquid?
Yeah.
For a couple of days, because, you know, depending on access to roads, as we found out, oh, by the way, Vancouver and Highway 1 was kind of cut off for a little bit.
Well, I mean, there still is parts of it that I think Trans-Canadian 1 is still gone.
Yeah.
Props to Canadian Search and Rescue, because I think for a while there, like YVR was like separated from, like, everything from Fraser River up to YVR. It was basically just a flood zone.
It's something to have that. I've been having thought exercises.
Yeah, same here.
Recently, as far as the what if. I don't live in what if, but every now and then, when you want to be able to have these thought exercises about what could happen and how would you respond, what would you do.
Yeah,
it's good to do that dress rehearsal should another instance like this occur. So, but hey, with the Bellingham podcast, we are with everyone, and we certainly hope that everyone is doing as good as they possibly can.
Yeah. Cheers.
But we do have, in lighter-hearted news, we have a new sponsor for this episode.
Oh my gosh, who is this sponsor this week,
Well,
Chris?
last episode we talked about an app for your
the
phone.
fine folks at Megaphone.
That's right. But this week's sponsor is Cool AF, as the kids would say nowadays. Now, in this case,
Autofocus?
Not quite. The AF stands for Auto Flipper.
Oh.
Now, just in time for the holiday shopping season and your evening commute, the Auto Flipper easily mounts to the undercarriage of your vehicle.
Oh, your undercarriage.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it's a smart car or a jacked up dually truck. With a push of a button from your included handy dandy Bluetooth dongle in your car, the Auto Flipper will extend a 3-foot wide by 12-foot long spatula from the front of your vehicle and flip the car ahead of you out of your way.
How Hot Wheels.
Just like pancakes. Perfect for those grueling commutes to and from work. The Auto Flipper will make that trek to the office a breeze. Those days of showing up late to the office will be in the rearview mirror, pun intended. No more grumpy boss looking at their watch as you hang your head in sheepishness from a crowded rush hour as you head into the office late from their start time. Enjoy the warm greetings from your family when you return home on time with the Auto Flipper. You know, AJ, the question on many of our listeners' minds is, Chris, have you been flipped with the Auto Flipper? Well, not yet. I'm a conscientious driver. I use my left and right turn signals and go only 5 miles over the speed limit. But one time, on a Saturday afternoon, I was following a Toyota Prius on the Guide Meridian headed towards Linden. That's State Route 539 if you're playing at home. When all of a sudden, a large truck with big wheels roared up behind me. It nearly hit me, you know. I guess I wasn't going as fast as they wanted me to be, so they sped in the other lane going north on Meridian and quickly lurched in front of this Prius ahead of me. Turns out, even though the flags in the back of the truck bed were flapping proudly, I noticed the driver's hands stick out the window. Guess they wanted to wave in a sorry for cutting you off fashion, but they forgot to include the other 4 fingers in their apology for the reckless driving.
That commonly happens.
It does happen. Gradually, more and more of these large trucks, all with loud mufflers, as it turns out, large tires and flags in the back waving in the breeze, passed me and the driver of the Prius, all cutting us off. Well, I happen to notice, AJ, that the Prius flipped these trucks off the road.
Oh,
One by one, these jacked up trucks tumbling over the side of the road, just like a kid playing with Matchbox cars or Hot Wheels, like you mentioned earlier. The auto flipper, folks, made that Prius's trip to Linden much more enjoyable, with much less carbon monoxide inhalation from the plentiful exhaust fumes from those big trucks driving on the Guide Meridian. Hey, get your motor running and head out on the highway. Move those pesky vehicles out of your way with the auto flipper. Call 1-248-434-5508 within the next 72 hours, and they'll send not one, but 2 auto flippers directly to your door. Some assembly required. Check with your insurance company before installation. Check out thenewshiny.org for more information on how you can order the auto flipper this holiday season. Our thanks to the folks at Auto Flipper for sponsoring this show.
I believe they're a Pacific Northwest brand, aren't they?
They are actually, I think they're based out of Boise, Idaho.
Oh, are they Boise, Idaho?
Yeah,
okay.
the local PNW style.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm really glad that you can find all that information on thenewshiny.org.
But you know what is not in Boise, Idaho?
Well, KMRE 102.3 FM here in Bellingham, Washington.
Bellingham, Washington. Their broadcast signal is still going strong, and on the internet, they are still at kmre.org. They're very sweet to be able to broadcast our episodes Saturdays at 3 p.m.
Yep.
We thank you, KMRE, for your continued support of the Bellingham podcast. AJ!
Chris!
Okay, I'm back now. I'm out of my commercial pitchman mode. I believe you have had some field tests of some items.
I did. So kind of going over some other that EDC bit that we did last episode. There's a couple other things that I've been holding off on mentioning only because I wanted to run through a few actual use cases. Big shock. Here's a bag. So Kavu, which is a Seattle-based company. I recently bought one of their sling bags, which if you don't recall, listeners, Kavu is a sling style bag, but where the strap that crosses your body would just be like nylon or just a single color of fabric or whatnot. Kavu actually uses a cotton rope that is very reminiscent of carrying 4 strands of climber's rope.
All right.
So wearing it looks like you have basically your climbing rope, over you type of thing, or it's very reminiscent of it.
KAVU.
Yes, which I found out stands for clear with a K, above visibility unlimited.
I thought it was a television station personally, but I was incorrect.
So I've had one and I've been using it now in the wet for the last 2 months, and I really like it. But I do have some kind of critical reviews of it. One, the way the sling is, you have to carry it across your body over your right shoulder, just the nature of the ergonomics of the bag. Not a deal breaker for me, but if you tend to sling the other way, you won't be able to do it with a Kavu, unless you use they have a different bag that does do both shoulders, but the Kavu rope sling, it goes one shoulder. The other thing is, and I think I mentioned it in that episode, is typically Kavu rope slings are kind of more marketed towards those that identify as female. I have one. I see it as a bag, quite frankly, and it's a topographical print. It's in Chris Powell approved black.
Well, that's good enough for me then.
But I mean, I don't, if you see a wide variety of prints, that's kind of the strength. You can get it in various colors if you're not Chris Powell black approved. And they're kind of exclusive. Once they do a run, once they are done with that print, it kind of goes into the archives or the vault. We'll talk about that later. But, there's kind of a collector's community around Kavu bags because of the prints. So if you wanted to try one, because this is the other thing, if you're in the Bellingham area, you don't want to necessarily drive down to Seattle. They do have a store down in Seattle. If you go to just downtown to our own Backcountry Essentials.
On Holly Street?
Yeah, down on Holly Street, near Lake Bayou.
Yeah, Wild Buffalo in that area.
Yeah, I love that place. They have several different kinds of Kavu bags to try them out, and I would encourage you to just check them out. Like I said, they're great. They don't fit an iPad Pro. This is a very svelte, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 liters. These are very small slings, but
to give people an idea, would that fit an iPad Mini or an iPad Air perhaps?
No, you might be able to get an Air in there. iPad Mini easily with a Kindle. Like for me, because I tend to walk from work to home now, so I basically have my second layer in case it rains.
Yes,
I'll have a couple of tech bits and bobs and some gloves, a water bottle, and that's it. It's
a stripped down EDC.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, so I just want to throw that out because I mentioned it several episodes back, and now I have one. So putting my money where my mouth was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And speaking of bags, I want to go back to something else like that. A little bit of housekeeping I wanted to make mention of. Last episode 201, we were talking about my sling bag that I got from Chrome Industries. And you had made a comment, AJ. They're based in Portland, right? And naturally, not knowing the exact details of the thing, I talked out of my butt. And I wanted to make amends for that. Chrome Industries, the fine makers of the sling bag that I currently have and many other fine bags and goods and materials, is based in Portland. They've had a long story. They've been in Denver. They've been in the Bay Area. They've been everywhere, man. But currently they're in Portland with a whole lot of retail stores all over the world. Mission Workshop, hi Luke, is based in San Francisco. And so that is the clarification I wanted to make. AJ, once again, for the 202nd time, you are right. It was based in Portland.
I was taking a stab because last time we were down in Portland, I remember going to the store, so I thought they were just based there.
There you go. But anyway, let's get to our new segment, shall we?
Ah, yes. Now it is time for my second favorite part of the show, which is Rad or Sad, where Chris Powell and I have a few things that we're going to surprise each other and find out whether they are rad or sad.
All right, I'll go first this time, since you started first last episode. State Street here in Bellingham. Let's think about going westbound on State Street, headed towards Fairhaven.
Fairhaven, okay.
Like from Chestnut Street to Fairhaven. Those residential development buildings and reconfiguring the roads from a 2-lane road from how it was before with kind of parallel curbside parking to the angle parking, making it a 1-lane road. AJ, rad or sad?
Sad.
Why is that?
Well, okay. A few things. One, I don't understand on a one-way road where there's 2 lanes and you have the angled parking on one of the busiest thoroughfares in Bellingham, having that parking arrangement right there, and how we're not to expect to have more accidents, whether that is vehicle to vehicle or, because there is also I believe there's a bike lane on that side. Like, it just seems very claustrophobic. I can't tell you how many times where if you have a little car like my wife and you park by 2 big trucks and you back out behind that truck, by the time you get enough clearance so that you can see around the bumper that you have parked next to, you are inching out hoping that you're not going to get clipped.
Especially by someone who is not driving the speed limit. Let's be honest here, 25 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Nah, they're going 35.
Yeah.
Just to be able to blast through that. I'm going to go with sad as well. While it's great that we have urban infill for accommodating the number of residents in Bellingham with housing, how this was set up, I can hear the insurance adjusters in the distance squealing with delight at the amount of claims that are going to be had as future collisions occur on this. Both, there's a little bit of a loop that you can kind of turn around and go on the other one way. I believe that would be Forest. Anyway, the opposite way. It's lots of apartment buildings, lots of people with vehicles, lots of vehicular traffic, and oh, by the way, we have a bike lane. Good luck. So that's, unfortunately, I'm going to go with sad on that one. AJ.
So a little bit of a primer. So I was listening to the Waveform podcast, which, if you're not familiar with it, is hosted by Marquez, who is a amazing YouTuber. He goes by MKBHD, if you don't know who Marquez is. I've followed him since early days. He usually covers tech and stuff. Very clear, unbiased reviews and stuff. So on Waveform, his podcast, him and his mates did a 1,000-mile EV road trip recap. And they talked in just reality of, if you have an EV and you just wanted to do a sporadic, spontaneity, let's go on a road trip because we just took off a couple of days, let's go. And what reality is like today with the infrastructure on having an EV and doing something spontaneous. So, Chris, my question for rad or sad is electric vehicles today, rad or sad?
I'm going to go against the grain. While I think it's a wonderful idea, I'm going to go sad, AJ.
Why?
It's sad because while electric vehicles will theoretically save us, save our planet, there's still the electricity costs.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, there's still traffic. As the auto flipper can help with.
Oh, yes, of course.
But unfortunately, the Great American Road Trip adventure is a thing of the past. Unless if you're in a whole lot of desolate areas, and I'm sure there are around the country, but based in PNW, with Interstate 5 and Interstate 90. I don't see any, other than if you go into the county, floodwaters notwithstanding, it's really tough to find an open road where you can get 1,000 miles clocked to be able to enjoy the road trips. I'm just going to go sad because why not? I'm going to be a rabble rouser. AJ, rad or sad?
So I'm on the opposite side. I'm going to say this is rad. Largely because the thing that I love about Marquez, and it is a long episode. The thing is that like he takes his tone to technology to what these kind of vehicles are. They're a new piece of technology, and kind of demystify a lot of things about American culture in vehicles, in like the identity of them. You know, does a Tesla say? What does a Tesla say about me? No. Just literally, can it go 1,000 miles? What type of pain points? No differently than if I were to say like, substitute car with insert technology. Does it have the battery to do this? What is the workflow? And like I said, it was a different take than I'm used to, because most of the time we get hung up on either a CEO taking a tweet and that's what we're talking about, or the design aesthetic. No. Brass tacks, it has to serve a utility. Does it or doesn't it?
Does it get the job done?
Exactly.
I can see that.
So that's why I say it, I think rad for the podcast and rad for, EVs in general, because it is a booming technology.
All right. Well, MKBHD, I subscribe to you on a non-YouTube platform so I can watch your videos. AJ is going to subscribe to you on the podcast. So there you go. Next on the rad or sad, I'm going to go with on James Street, Trader Joe's. Rad or sad, AJ? Come on now.
Yeah, like I don't know, like rad or sad on Trader Joe's.
That yeah is not rad or sad.
I know. I guess I'm gonna go with rad.
Why?
I don't have any beef with Trader Joe's. Like, I mean, they're a grocery store and they're in a community, so you can walk and get your groceries when you're in that community. Like, cool.
I'm going to go with rad because they have decent prices for the single portion type of victuals.
Oh, true.
That a single person, maybe not for the family with a couple kiddos and stuff. That can be a whole lot of stuff. But I think from a one-off, hey, I'm feeling like I want to get something healthy, because a lot of their food stuffs are healthy, I would imagine. I think that there's how they choose the buildings to go into. You notice they don't have the huge warehouse style dwellings.
They're not Costco.
Implied claustrophobia with these small carts and how you get to navigate around. That's just due to demand. I'm going to go with rad just because, hey, Trader Joe's, glad you're there despite what they all say about, oh, by the way, if you can avoid the parking lot, good luck.
Valid.
Go for it.
Going green.
It's not easy being green. I prefer,
Well, it's just a growing trope, like, kind of going. I've got a little bit of a theme with everything with my rads or sads, but like, a company saying that they are going green. Pick any company. I'm going to poke fun at Apple as soon as you give me your response. But the term going green and companies taking a stance of going green, rad or sad?
I'm going to go with sad, and here's why. I think it's an overused trope, an idiom that will help a business gain credibility. If for Apple to hit us over the head with a hammer saying we're sustainable in every keynote and every presentation they make about new technology, we only used recycled blah blah blah. Yeah. No CO2 emissions or stuff like that. We care about your privacy. I just don't have that level of trust. Now, if we're going to really go green and be sustainable, we're going to be fishing things out of the dumpster, repurposing and recycling them. We're going to be going to those discount secondhand stores to be able to buy something that was donated by someone else or consigned by someone else. The reuse factor is the case. To create new products that are quote unquote sustainable, I need a little bit more convincing. And hey, I'm open to have my mind changed. I'm open to have my perspective altered. That's cool. Come at me, bro. Not literally, but anyway. I don't want to get into arguments with people, but I'm going to just say sad because I think it's walk the walk. You're going to talk about going green. Well, let's see some evidence of this in a way that here's some dollars and cents and what you're actually saving, and the contributions of avoiding or the lack of contributions for landfills for your byproducts in creating these products. I really would like to learn more about that.
Yeah.
AJ.
So I'm going to say rad. And the reason is because I think going into my third pick, it'll kind of flesh out a little bit. I think the term going green, especially coming out of like COP26, the whole like global thing, I think it is going to take a different stance.
By the way, let me interrupt. For those of the 4 listeners out there that we have, that one of them may not be familiar with COP26, like me, what does COP26 mean?
COP or COP26, that's that big global summit that happened in Glasgow where all the G20 or the big economies of the world came together to try to set the second part of like the Paris Accord for green and carbon emissions, etc.
Climate Overall Perspective 26.
Bingo.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
So I think out of that, because it does, depending on how you subscribe to the news, I think the general buzz coming out of it was there was a lot of talk. What are we going to physically do? What are the outcomes that we can expect that is going to make an impact? And next steps, please. Like that was kind of the tone that I saw from both sides. And coming out of this, Hodinkee magazine had a feature about Apple, being basically the largest watch manufacturer of the world now. And I'm not rad about that. I'm rad at the fact that more and more people are looking at more archaic technologies in the vein of, we used to be able to repair things. We used to be able to maintain something. And the disposable consumeristic society that we have developed for capitalism, albeit that is good for an economy of scale, we now know is not sustainable. So I'm rad on the fact that I think going green is going to have a different connotation moving forward. I don't think it's going to be like you just said, where it's going to stay. Apple now has 99.9% arsenic glass in their devices. Cool. Can I have my device for 10 years? Is it going to be supported so that I don't have to go out and get the new shiny.org?
What Apple is doing, and here's a knucklehead technologist who doesn't know what he's talking about right here. They're actually the world's largest leader in rechargeable wearable devices.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a watch, you have watches. I have watches that, based on a battery replacement or self-winding, depending on which kind you choose, could last for longer generations, centuries. The implied obsolescence of current technology is not future-proofing. Right. And they don't keep that future-proofing in mind. How could you be talking about being sustainable and not having an impact on the environment when you have an implied ticking time frame of a countdown to obsolescence in which the consumer would dispose of it? Right. Golly, we're going deep on this one. Yes.
But that's the per rad or sad.
All right. My third rad or sad, and this one is, taking a turn away from Bellingham. Comments in online articles or social media posts. AJ.
Sad.
Why?
Oh my gosh. As a content creator of over a decade, comments are the worst. I have been trolled. I have been called out. And it's always those comments that are the ones that stick in a creator's craw more so than the positivity. You pick any medium, whether it's a podcast or being a vlogger or being anything, any type of content creation, comments are always fraught with peril. So, sad.
Okay. I'm actually going to go rad.
Say what?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm also a content creator. However, I have eliminated so many avenues of social media. Is that me being a hypocrite? Perhaps. But here's the thing. When I see comments made by people, at least those who are identified with their name, I get to know a little bit more about that person. Oh, you're sharing with me more about yourself. Some information that you may not be sharing in your typical in-person social exterior. You probably wouldn't be saying these words if I was in the same room with you. You probably wouldn't be saying these words if you knew that you would be being served with a quick and fast rebuke, or at least a response. I get to know more about what is going on inside of you, the hurt that may be there, the brokenness, the unresolved frustrations based from your traumatic childhood. This is rad because now I get to know more about these people that are calling you, AJ, a poopy head.
That's nice.
And for those who will be lighting me up on Twitter saying Chris Powell is a horrible podcaster, that's totally cool. Opinions vary.
Sure.
But I get to know more about that as far as the comments. Some of them are actually informative, where I can learn a different perspective than what the actual article or the original post contains. But I'm going to go with rad on that one. What a lovely segue into, I believe, your favorite segment of the show.
Yes, quality assurance, because these picks are picked for you by Agent Marseille and Chris Powell for your quality assurance.
That's right. You go first on this one, homie.
Well, it was a hard pivot. Okay, so I've got a documentary for people to check out, and it's called The Alpinist. So there's a bit of a Pacific Northwest hook into the Alpinist. The climber's name is Marc-Andre, and he grew up in the Coquitlam, Squamish area of British Columbia and Vancouver, so not too far from us here in Bellingham. It is a story of a alpinist climber who solos very big mountains. I don't want to go into too great a detail if you haven't checked out the film, because you need to sit down and watch it, because I don't want to spoil anything. But if you're not familiar with the term alpinism, if you may have watched another documentary by an excellent climber, Alex Honnold, on free solo. A lot of people look at him as, that's bananas. Why would you ever climb a big mountain without a rope? That's a suicide attempt. And he comes at it from a perspective, much like anybody who is part of the mountain culture, of purity and performance and all this other jazz. And if you thought Alex was crazy, when you watch The Alpinist, you're going to think a whole new level of crazy. Because imagine Alex is doing a climb much like a ballet. It is rehearsed. Every movement is perfect. And the mountain is perfect. The conditions are perfect. It is literally, in his essence, perfect. It is to achieve perfection as a human. Whereas in The Alpinist, you see the same type of ethos, but in chaos, because the mountain does not care about you. And this individual climbs all conditions all year, solo, no rope, mixed climbing. That means using ice and, free climbing. It is bananas. But when you watch it, it's an interesting, I will prepare you for a culture shock in rock, basically. Not hard rock, but climbing rock. So that's all I'm going to say.
All right.
Check out The Alpinist.
It sounds like a very interesting story.
Yes.
For my quality assurance, I have two. The first one is not quite a documentary, but what they are calling a docu-series. So I've always had lots of reverence for the Beatles. And there is coming on Thanksgiving Day, Disney Plus, one of the streaming options out there, will have a 3-part docu-series called Get Back. And I watched a preview of this, and it piqued my interest, and I wanted to, and its quality as far as I'm concerned, because way back in the day, 50 some years ago, a film crew was given unprohibited access, complete access to the Beatles, John, Paul, George, Ringo. And the project that they were undertaking back a half century ago was to take in 3 weeks' time, write, record, and perform at an entire new album of songs in 3 weeks' time.
That's bonkers.
And evidently there was 57 hours of footage that was accumulated based on this, access. And it sat in a vault for 50 years.
That vault that every company seems to have.
Yeah, like, speaking of free solo, it's like Han Solo in Carbonite. It is just sitting there for
vault.
Yes, exactly. So I'm really intrigued in this docuseries, but whether or not you know who the Beatles are, if you've never listened to them, or if you are a really huge fan, I think this is a story that this docuseries will kind of tell. From what I saw in the previews, there's a little bit of conflict, and we all like conflict, as decades of reality television have shown. The second part of my quality assurance is I got to end on a happy note, because we've had some tough times this week in Whatcom County, and I want to end on a lighthearted note, so to speak. So on the Twitter, of which I really don't have much of a presence, there is an account called @AI_metal_bot, with an account name, This Band Isn't Real. So basically, on Twitter, and by the way, check out the Substack link that we got for the notes on how you can access this. This Band Isn't Real has an artificial intelligence generator that creates heavy metal, death metal band names and album titles.
This is a good use of AI.
This makes my heart happy that, I love technology always and forever. This is case in point, because, for example, Angry Old Men from New Jersey,
yes,
is the name of This Band Isn't Real, but it's a metal band. Under Hollow Skies, with the album The Wind Brings Demise, that just creates a darkness in my life that I would love to hear some chug, chug, chug with. And Skylurker, Whispers from the Mist. What a wonderful dark metal band name and album name. But the best part about it, AJ, is I'm going to tie this full circle. From a technology standpoint, the band auto-generated name and the album, great passwords.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm on the bandwagon to get you to update your personal email password sometime before the end of the year? Angry Old Men from New Jersey. That's a pretty good password to have.
That's solid.
The Under Hollow Skies, The Wind Brings Demise. If you can pound that out each time or save it in a password manager, you got yourself a secure password. Anyway, check out This Band Isn't Real on Twitter. I think you'll be entertained. And if you can look past the artwork of the death metal ilk, maybe not suitable for all children based on the content of the artwork, it's quite entertaining from what you're seeing. So that is my quality assurance from this episode. That's all I got to say.
Well, good. I'm going to make like an auto flipper and flip on the exit credits, because that wraps up this edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us wherever you like to get our podcast. Remember, if you're in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
I'm going to go at 0.75 as opposed to your 1.4 speed for that. They are community powered.
I'm going to speed you up because I got to get this done.
At kmre.org.
Remember, if you want to get all the show notes, you can subscribe to us on Substack. We are at bellinghampodcast.substack.com. On that note, from the city by the Salish Sea. And hopefully you're keeping dry. I'm AJ Barce.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks once again for joining us on episode 202, that palindrome episode, backwards and forwards, on the Bellingham Podcast.
I think it's a double palindrome, because this is coming out on November 21st, 2020. No, I guess, yeah, it is. No,
12/20.
12/21/21.
Yeah, we got to record one on December 20 for the palindrome one.